the boarding schools were really detrimental to the Native people's way of life. As the non-Indian people pushed west, they had two options, and for the most part they used the first option, was to just kill us. And then there were some humanitarians, I guess we could call them humanitarians, that said, well, that's not good. You know, it's not good to just kill them and wipe them out. Let's make them like us.
My grandfather and his wife were working up at Somes Bar at the mine, and the agent from Hoopaw came up to Somes Bar, the agent, and wanted to take his children to Indian school. This would be pretty close to 1900. Or thereabouts. And they came up and he wouldn't let them take them. He said, no, I support myself and my family. I do not get commodities. I don't get food from you. I don't get wire from you. I don't get housing from you. I don't get a doctor from you. I don't get anything from the Indian program. And I'm not going to send my children to Indian school. So then they brought the sheriff up and took them. And they took them all down to my little 18-month-old uncle.
In many places, the children were forcibly taken, stolen, and given a one-way ticket to the boarding schools. Another way they made the students go is that if the parents would not let the kids go, they would take away their rations. And the Native people had been made to be dependent on the rations because they were not allowed to hunt and fish anymore, or they were not allowed to leave the reservation. So if they then took away the rations, you starved, not only you, but your family.
The McCovies were going to school over there, and they had a little baby brother. And those girls got to take care of their baby brother. And she always wished that that the matrons would let her and Hazel take care of their little baby brother at night and after school.
What did they do with the baby brother at school?
He had a nurse. He was in the nursery with a bunch of other little baby brothers.
It was a really harsh environment. A lot of kids died there. They were raised up in military-style fashion. There was no compassion, no love, no understanding of who the kids were. And when those kids grew up to be parents, they did not, a lot of them did not cuddle and hug their kids because nobody had ever done that for them, and it was very uncomfortable for them to do that. And so that comes down through the generations.
And my uncle was always kind of a little odd. He didn't raise his child. When his wife left him, and his wife drank a lot, and her mother took finally he had her mother take the child, and he paid her, but she drank too. And Grandpa always thought that he should have raised his own child.
Another result today that we see from the boarding school era and the genocide era is the drugs and alcohol. You know, when you hear the stories, and you don't hear the stories often because it was such a horrific time that people don't talk about it. And they didn't talk about it because to do so takes you back to that time. And so, you know, can you imagine how it must have felt for the men to be helpless to do anything against these invaders that were killing and doing these horrible things to the women. And so when they brought alcohol, it was a way to forget. So I think these social factors can be traced back to that terrible time in our history.
I know it, know it, I know it, know it, hiya. things kind of dropped dead then. There was nothing happening as we moved.
There was still nothing.
Our ceremony stopped. But we left because they still had traditional stuff happening in Hoopaw. That's why we moved down there. Yeah, they had their deerskin dance, bush dances, and all that kind of stuff. So we down there participating with them, keep our thoughts going.
Who did you live with down there?
My grandparents, we all moved down there together. That's who raised us. Spoke Indian all the time, and mixed, English and mixed. And she kind of trying to fool us like she didn't know how to write or anything. Like she knew how to write letters and stuff like that. How she went to school in Hoopaw and boarding school there. She made us go to school every day like everybody else, and church. There's different things we had to do. Yeah, we moved back up here in the summertime, in the old place, cleaned it up, and that kind of stuff, and then moved back in the fall. Well, we had to do all the gathering. Out there cutting hazel sticks and willows, and down there digging root for baskets and all that stuff, ferns, and picking up acorns and whatever else we had to do. Kept us going all the time. You don't see that anymore.
When we look at our widespread lack of knowledge about our ways, like there's some people that know them and practice them, but there's some people that don't, and it's because they were not taught our ways, because if you tried to practice them, you were punished. I know this one lady that was in the boarding schools, and they put a hot iron on her arm for speaking her language.
My grandmother was actually one of the last first language speakers of the tribe. She was very reluctant and slow about and selective about what she would share and how, and she had her reasons for that. She went to Chimawa. Yep, she got picked up and taken there, and actually they were just going to let her die in the school when she got sick. She had a very tough time. She was one of those kids, and she wouldn't talk about it much, but there were glimpses and moments of where you could see that she didn't speak the English. She understood it and knew what everybody was saying, but she wouldn't speak it. Her older brothers and sister would translate for her all the time. And finally, she got punished for it. I never did find out to the extent of what that meant, but she got punished for it, and her brothers and sisters did, because they were enabling her by translating for her. So that's one of the reasons why she wouldn't teach me for a long time. And then I must have been 26 to 28, somewhere around there, when she said, okay, I'll work with the language program.
My father was a good teacher. He was a non-violent man, which I'm grateful for, because when I was growing up, the parents weren't really like that, and parents generally were very abusive toward their kids. Growing up, I saw it all the time with my cousins and my all of my relations.
I'm sure he was full of conflict. Full of conflict because he had all these traditional skills, and he had the language, and he had these things, but it was pounded into him that you do not use those things. You need to, hey, build roads and educate yourself and work hard, and America, and do that.
It was not an isolated thing. It was everywhere. It was just normal.
The boarding school systems and the atrocities that have gone on have never been conducive to the feeling of getting an education, and trust within the public schools has been very, very weak. Still is today. Even last year, as the Karuk education coordinator, going to some of the public schools, it was like they'd flat out tell you, well, don't your kids want to go off and get a college? A lot of our kids don't care whether they go to school here now. And that's a reality. And they go, I don't understand that. Why wouldn't their parents or, their families want them to go to school? So having to teach a little bit about the historical trauma that's gone on in general, but also within education, is you know, it's difficult, and unless you kind of understood it and lived it, you don't get it completely. You still get a lot of, well, you just need to pull your bootstraps up. And these are just, you know, I mean, straight out from a superintendent of a school district.
That's what they're telling
Yeah,
students?
yeah, as natives, you know, just pull your, you deal with it, get on with it. Most of them still think that that's all in the past.
Going to school here in Orleans, when I was a kid, the school and the community was very segregated, and the way that the school was, the way it went was, we had basically 2 teachers for every class, and it was like all the Indian kids were in special education, and we had our own teacher. And then all the non-Indian kids were in the regular classroom with their teacher. But I think it was a matter of, oh, the Indian kids are too, the special ed kids are a problem to have them in the classroom because they disrupt the regular classroom. And so that was, you know, there wasn't really any expectations. So I didn't really have that, any kind of support really at home. By the time I was 6th grade, I was pretty much convinced that you know, school was the most horrible place on earth. My life from then on was all about how can I be done with this.
I wasn't a great student. I was really friendly, and I loved my teachers, and I loved my classmates, and I loved to play, and I didn't really like school all that much. I just really, you know, I had terrible handwriting. I didn't really get math. I just always kind of skated by, just kind of by the skin of my teeth. But on Indian Day, that was my favorite day because I knew everybody, I knew all the stuff, and I was the smartest kid in school that day. I had songs, I knew how to gamble, I knew how to jump, I knew how to dance, sing, acorns, I knew all that stuff because of this living in 2 worlds thing. There was never Western education encouragement. I just didn't view it very highly, and my father was more on the side of purposely not being down for it. Like I said, it wasn't necessarily talked down about, it just wasn't a priority.
On a different note, as far as educational experiences, or traditional educational experiences, started very young, of course, with my father, but with my uncles, and since a lot of the guys my age are dead, it was easier to find friends that were old, because there wasn't very many of them my age around. There aren't. And so I had a lot of mentors that I called my close friends.
No, I just hit around him all the time, you know. It's the Krayev was always looking after, you know. Sent me slamming right into the wall he is. And that's, there's no question to it, whether he's old or not, he's my good friend. And I think that's the kind of relationship we have to have.
And we both got a lot to learn yet.
Yeah, the yearning to learn, something we both share.
Well, if you quit learning, you're pretty much over with, I think. All my teachers, you know, they're gone now. It just seemed like I hit them at the right time, you know, or they hit me at the right time. And you have to be open to it, or maybe not. I mean, a lot of it was, in fact, a lot of it was I was resisting it, you know, because I knew it was going to bring a change to me. But they were persistent.
We could find an opportunity to get out every single day and teach more and more about the tradition, the culture, and the locality, along with education, the academic piece, I think we would flourish.
There's that lack of attention between what all students need and what our tribal students need specifically. And they need curriculum that's relevant to them and that they can actually get interested in to help keep them in school and keep them interested. Like Common Core really has freed, especially the English classroom, to go outside the textbook.
Having local history is important. And I think the younger you start knowing the truth and knowing the true history of things, the better you are accepting it. I've been to college where many people didn't know Native people even existed. I feel like the truth benefits everybody, and if people, I don't know, people give kids a lot less credit for what they're able to handle and learn. And having as many people in the class come and go as you can, having elders come through, that kind of stuff, I think helps a lot. I know teachers say, well, we ask people and they don't come. I know it's hard, but you're gonna have to like get allies to help you get people in the class, I guess.
I think that's one of the things that makes some of the teachers hesitant to use the cultural curriculum, because they think they have to have an Indian come in to teach it. All the information you need to have is right here. And I said, it's okay not to know. If a student asks you something that you don't know the answer to, just tell them, I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody in here know? Yeah. And if nobody in the class knows, then say, well, we should research that.
Tribal curriculum within classrooms has to happen in this place in particular, for sure, for a multitude of reasons. For one, just like when I was talking about Indian Day earlier, being like, man, I was the smartest kid in the class that day. My value felt high. I felt really valued on that day, and my peers were looking to me. And so if you had something in classrooms where kids are seeing the value of what their parents have been trying to show them, and if their parents haven't been showing them, sparking their parents to teach them more, because you go to American school and none of what's important to your life in this place is being represented in that place, and so you feel like it is less than.
I think often, man, if we'd have just had this when I was a kid in the classroom, I think that things would have been different for me. I think that I would have been okay with school. I think I could have done okay at school.
I'm definitely a big fan of the more you learn about your culture, your language, and your traditions, the better you feel as a person and the better connected you are with your own spirit. And I think that helps guide you and push you towards success.
We can meet all those standards and do a total Karuk-centric lesson plans. And turns out, and all the kids will be, Karuk and non-Karuk, will be better off for it.
If you're valuing culture, traditions, and still doing Western stuff and meeting standards, then somebody please argue with me and tell me what the harm would be.
For a long time, it was not good to be Indian, but now it is.
How old were you when you came home from Indian school?
I was 15. I just stayed down there 1 year, and then they closed the Sherman Institute to California Indians because they said we were too acculturated, that they wanted to work on the Navajos and the Hopis in our school down there. I was glad to come home. But I wasn't mourning for home all the time I was down there. There was a lot of kids to play with. I lived on this flat, and there was Curdy, Hillman, Laverne, and I.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. So when you get down there, there's 1,000 kids.
And so then for these guys' generation, they get these weird parents, and I'm hoping for them that they can continue to be Indians, and they can continue bringing things back, and that's what I really hope for them, and they're going to have their own unique California Indian experience.